Right now, across the country, there are these massive commercial developments going up.
Right.
And entire residential tracts, being built without a single 2x4 being cut in the mud.
Yeah. Or the snow.
Exactly. Or the rain. It's all happening off-site.
It completely upends the visual we all have of a traditional job site. And it really does.
It really does.
Yeah.
Welcome to this deep dive. I was actually on with our internal trend scanner today, and the search volume for the term prefab construction company just broke our tracking scale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it literally hit 100 out of 90.
Yeah.
And, this isn't a glitch.
Right. It's not just a localized blip or something.
No, not at all. We are seeing a sustained, massive acceleration across the 7-day, the 3-month, and the 12-month timeframes, all simultaneously.
Which is wild.
It is. Contractors are just actively hunting for prefab partners at absolute record levels.
Which tells us we are watching a fundamental, structural pivot happen in real time. This is a $61 billion tidal wave building off the coast, and the industry is scrambling to get their surfboards ready.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are decoding this massive prefab boom for you.
Because it's a lot to unpack.
It is. We're going to unpack the sheer scale of the market growth, look at the top 15 prefab companies separated into 4 specific tiers, and most importantly for your bottom line, we're going to hand you the exact playbook.
Yeah, the how-to.
Exactly. How to evaluate these manufacturers and actually build highly profitable partnerships with them.
Right, because knowing a trend is happening is, it's useless if you don't understand the mechanisms. You have to know how to execute on it without losing your shirt.
So true. Let's start with the sheer size of the pie and why the smart money is moving there right now.
The $61 billion pie.
Yeah, we are looking at a U.S. prefab market that is sitting at roughly $44.21 billion right now in 2026. Mm-hmm. But by 2031, that number is projected to just skyrocket to $61 billion.
And we need to be very clear about where those projections originate, because those numbers and growth projections come directly from Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report.
Right.
We are looking at a massive 6.67% compound annual growth rate.
Let's translate that CIGR for a second, because in an industry that is, notoriously stubborn,
very stubborn,
very slow to adopt new methodologies, a nearly 7% compound annual growth rate represents a staggering, almost violent amount of capital reallocation.
Violent capital reallocate. I think that's a great way to put it.
It's like Henry Ford's assembly line finally arriving at the modern construction site, but, a century late.
Yeah, because contractors aren't just curious about prefab right now. They're being forced into it by sheer necessity.
Well, let me pause you there.
Yeah.
Because we've seen a lot of crazy trends pop up over the last few years, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen post-pandemic hype cycles, temporary reactions to lumber spikes, supply chain shocks. How do we know this isn't just a flash in the pan?
Because of the underlying mechanics of the labor market, we know it's a permanent shift.
The labor shortage.
Exactly. Traditional methods simply cannot scale fast enough to meet current housing and commercial demand.
Because there's no one to build it.
Right. Think about the chronic systemic shortage of skilled trade labor. Master electricians and plumbers are aging out of the workforce.
Yeah, and there aren't enough apprentices coming up behind them to replace them.
Not even close. The traditional model of stick building everything on site, it requires a constantly rotating cast of subcontractors.
Which is a logistical nightmare.
It is. If your framing crew gets a better day rate across town, your whole schedule slips.
Or if it rains for 3 days, your lumber sits in the mud, your timeline shifts, and you're just bleeding money.
Right. You are entirely at the mercy of local variables. But the factory setting fundamentally changes the day-to-day life of the build.
Because it's controlled.
Completely controlled.
Right.
It solves the labor bottleneck because tradesmen go to the same climate-controlled facility every single day.
They aren't driving to 3 different sites a week.
No. And it solves weather delays entirely. Plus, the precision of factory machinery drastically reduces material waste.
Oh, that makes sense.
You aren't filling dumpsters with cutoffs, You are optimizing every piece of steel and wood.
So if this $61 billion pie is baking, who is actually eating it? Let's move into the heavyweights.
The big players.
Yeah. Looking at the report, we have Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 represents your national scale players. We are talking about Clayton Homes, Cavco Industries, and Champion, which is also known as Skyline.
Right. These are the titans of the residential and light commercial space.
Massive scale.
Yeah, they have the massive factory footprint required to just pump out volume.
And Clayton Homes is backed by Berkshire Hathaway.
Right. Warren Buffett.
Exactly. When Warren Buffett's empire is backing a specific tier of construction, they clearly see a massive economic moat.
And long-term cash flow.
Yep. But then you look at tier 2, which are the commercial and institutional giants, like Skanska, Bouteilles, Lend-Lease, and CIMC MBS.
The huge commercial guys.
Yeah. But if I'm a mid-sized commercial contractor listening to this right now, I have a genuine concern.
What's that?
Well, if these companies are operating on a massive national or even global scale, isn't there a very real risk that they're going to vertically integrate and just squeeze out the mid-sized local contractors entirely?
Just take the whole project.
Right. Why wouldn't they just take the whole pie?
It's a very logical fear, but it actually exposes a fundamental misunderstanding of the prefab business model.
Really?
Yeah, you have to look at how these giants actually make their money. Yes, they have the robotic assembly lines and the massive factory capacity.
Right.
But their margin is made strictly on factory throughput. Keeping the assembly line moving is their entire business.
So any delay outside the factory hurts them.
Exactly. A factory in Indiana doesn't want to deal with the local zoning board in a suburb of Dallas.
Oh, I see.
They don't want to manage the specific soil excavation requirements, pour the complex foundation, or, handle the intricate final utility hookups that vary wildly by municipality.
Because every city has its own weird rule.
Exactly. The moment a massive national player gets bogged down in local site logistics, their profitability just plummets.
It kills their throughput.
Yes. They don't want to conquer your local market. They want a turnkey local partner who understands all that local friction.
Oh, wow. So you aren't competing with Clayton Homes or Skanska. The local contractor becomes the vital last mile of the supply chain.
Precisely.
You are the designated receiver.
That is the opportunity right there. And to help contractors navigate this exact dynamic, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report categorizes these specific top 15 companies into these 4 distinct tiers.
Which is super helpful.
It is, because partnering with a tier 1 residential giant who needs a receiver for high volume housing is a completely different operational model than partnering with a tier 3 specialist.
Which is the perfect logical pivot. Because if the tier 1 giants are focused entirely on volume and scale, who is handling the really complex custom engineering?
The hard stuff.
Right, because someone has to be building the high-rises and the intricate commercial spaces.
And that brings us to tier 3 and tier 4.
Yeah. In tier 3, the specialists, you have Z Modular, VBC, and Guerdon Modular. And I was reading up on Z Modular, and they are doing 30-story stacking projects.
It's incredible.
My brain kind of broke trying to visualize that.
Yeah.
I mean, how does the cumulative weight of 30 stories of steel modules not just completely crush the bottom units?
It's a marvel of structural engineering, honestly, and it all comes down to rethinking load paths.
Okay, how so?
Well, in traditional high-rise construction, you are pouring massive concrete elevator cores and doing continuous steel welding on a windy 30th floor.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Oh.
And time-consuming.
Very. But Z Modular, and companies like them, they use precision-machined interlocking joints.
So they aren't just stacking boxes on top of boxes.
No, the structural steel frame of the module itself acts as a continuous steel column.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, the load is transferred through the vertical posts of the module directly down into the foundation. It bypasses the walls and the floors of the units below it entirely.
That's brilliant.
It relies on vector forces and a level of joining precision that you simply cannot achieve reliably in the open air on a traditional job site.
It's literally like snapping together giant industrial Lego bricks in the sky, but with absolute millimeter precision.
Exactly like that.
But then looking at another tier 3 player on this list, VBC. They recently bought up Katerra's assets for $21.25 million.
Yeah, that made huge waves.
Now, anyone who has been in this industry for more than 5 years remembers Katerra. They were the Silicon Valley unicorn that raised billions.
Billions with a B.
And then spectacularly crashed and burned.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, is scooping up a failed giant's assets for $21 million a genius move by VBC? Or are they just inheriting a fundamentally flawed, toxic system?
That is the $1 million question, or I guess the $21 million question.
Right.
To answer it, you really have to look at why Katerra actually failed.
Okay.
Katerra didn't fail because the core concept of prefab is flawed. They failed because of absolute hubris. They tried to be everything at once.
They got greedy.
Yeah. They wanted to be the architect, the software developer, the manufacturer, the general contractor, and the logistics company.
Oh, man. They tried to boil the ocean.
They did. They vertically integrated themselves straight into bankruptcy.
So what makes VBC different?
Well, VBC's move was a brilliant surgical capitalization on existing infrastructure. They didn't buy Katerra's bloated, failing business model.
So you just bought the hard assets.
Right. They bought their state-of-the-art factory floors, the robotics, and the machinery for literally pennies on the dollar. They acquired massive production capacity without taking on any of the toxic corporate overhead.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like you buy the world-class oven, you don't buy the failing restaurant.
That's a great way to look at it. And when you look at Tier 4, the international tier, you see companies like Modulaire Group, also known as Algico.
Okay.
They're bringing in $1.625 billion in revenue. And you have Daiwa House and Sekisui House out of Japan.
Those are huge numbers.
These international numbers are crucial because they prove this isn't just an American trend or some temporary fad.
It's a global shift.
Exactly. In places like Japan, where land is incredibly scarce and labor is historically constrained, prefab is already the global standard for high-volume construction. They've been perfecting these tolerances for decades.
Right. So we've seen the players, we understand the engineering mechanics, and we know the market is heading to $61 billion.
Yeah.
Now let's talk execution. Let's get into the partnership playbook.
Yeah.
If I'm a local contractor listening to this right now, how do I actually evaluate these manufacturing companies?
It's all about finding the right fit.
And even more critical, how do I handle the massive influx of work without my back office completely imploding under the weight of the logistics?
Well, the first step is identifying your profit centers.
Okay.
When you transition to being a local prefab partner, you are generally making your margin on 4 distinct phases.
What are they?
First is site preparation. So the grading, the foundation, the local utility tie-ins. Second is the actual physical assembly and setting of the modules as they arrive on the trucks.
Right.
Third is the MEP finishing. And fourth is crane services.
I really want to highlight that MEP finishing. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Right.
Because people assume prefab means it's 100% finished when it rolls off the truck.
Oh, it is far from it.
Right.
The modules come with the pipes and wires pre-installed in the walls, sure. But once those units are stacked, someone has to physically stitch them all together perfectly at the seams.
That sounds complicated.
It is. You have to connect the water lines across the modular boundaries, link the HVAC ducting, and tie the electrical into the main breaker.
So you still need experts on site.
Absolutely. It requires highly skilled local tradesmen to make sure the building actually functions as a single organism.
So with all that in mind, how do you pick the right factory partner to supply you?
You evaluate them using a strict criteria checklist. You look for a segment match, meaning, are you a commercial builder pairing with a commercial factory?
Right. You wouldn't pair a single-family home factory with a high-rise builder.
Exactly. You also look at their financing support and their overall factory capacity.
Okay.
But the absolute golden rule, the metric that will literally make or break your profitability, is the transport radius.
Ah, the 500-mile rule.
Yes, the 500-mile transport radius. If the manufacturing factory is further than 500 miles from your job site, the logistics costs will consume your entire margin.
Really? The entire margin?
Easily. Think about what it takes to move a 40,000-pound, 14-foot wide module across state lines.
I mean, you see those wide-load trucks on the highway all the time.
Right. You need wide-load escorts. You need complex highway permitting that changes state by state. Massive fuel costs.
That adds up fast.
It does. Beyond 500 miles, you are effectively paying a premium to ship empty air down the highway.
Okay, so let's walk through a real-world scenario here. Let's say you have found a partner within that 500-mile radius. You have the contract. Managing a traditional construction site is already chaotic, but managing a prefab assembly site feels more like air traffic control.
That's a great analogy.
Right. You have massive, expensive assets arriving at 60 miles an hour down an interstate. If your site excavation was delayed by 2 days because of a rainstorm and your crane service is now booked elsewhere,
You're in trouble.
yeah, where does that module go? It just sits on a flatbed truck on the side of the highway, and you are racking up thousands of dollars a day in standby fees.
Just burning cash.
Exactly. So with all these incredibly tight moving parts, how do you prevent the administrative side, the endless requests for information, the change orders, the daily logs from just eating all your profit?
That right there is the massive bottleneck in the industry today.
Paperwork.
Yeah. The physical assembly of a prefab building is incredibly fast, but traditional job site paperwork still moves at a glacial pace. If you are relying on manual data entry, or waiting weeks for an engineer to answer an RFI about a load-bearing wall via email, your project will bleed cash.
You can't afford a 2-week delay on an email.
No. This is why adopting an AI platform like Smart Business Automator is really the only way to scale this specific type of high-velocity operation.
Because if the physical building is going up in a week, you can't have a change order sitting in a project manager's inbox for 4 days.
Exactly. The speed of prefab execution demands a flawless, equally fast administrative backend.
Makes sense.
The Smart Business Automator platform is designed specifically to bridge that gap. One of its core features is document intelligence, which automatically extracts critical details from dense specs and drawings.
Meaning, instead of a project manager spending 4 hours cross-referencing a 200-page submittal to find the specific structural tolerance for a window installation, the platform just pulls the exact spec for them instantly.
Yes, instantly. And it pairs that with custom AI workflows to route those documents directly to the right stakeholders.
Oh, that's huge.
It is. For example, if a design variation pops up on the assembly floor, the system can actually generate AI-drafted RFI responses using the historical context and existing project records.
So you're not starting from scratch every time.
Right. It speeds up the communication loop exponentially so you aren't waiting on manual replies.
What about the logistics issue we talked about? The module sitting on the highway.
Well, the real lifesaver for the logistics you mentioned earlier is its schedule risk detection.
Okay.
It actively reviews project activity to find bottlenecks before they hit the job site.
Wait, so if my crane permit is being held up by the local city council, the software knows that before the factory ships the module.
That's the entire point. It flags the delay before the module is already sitting on a flatbed on the interstate costing you $5,000 a day.
Wow.
It catches budget variances and compliance gaps before they become expensive physical nightmares.
That changes everything.
It does. When a local contractor pairs the physical efficiency of prefab construction with the administrative efficiency of a platform like Smart Business Automator, they can handle multiple prefab sites simultaneously without drowning in paperwork.
And that is how you actually scale your business in this new environment.
Absolutely.
So bringing this all together, for you listening right now, you have a $61 billion tidal wave coming. You understand who the Tier 1 giants are. You know the engineering magic of the Tier 3 specialists. And you know that your primary role is to be the flawless, tech-enabled local receiver.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
Right now, as we discussed, the magic number for evaluating a manufacturing partner is that 500-mile transport radius.
Right, the golden rule.
That dictates the entire logistics board and your profitability. But as this market races toward that $61 billion mark by 2031, what happens to the map of American construction when these specialist factories start popping up in every single state? What happens to local zoning laws, local labor rates, and your entire supply chain when that 500-mile radius effectively shrinks to a 50-mile radius?
The speed of construction in your local market would be almost unrecognizable.
It changes the entire paradigm of how we build the world around us.
If you know a contractor who is trying to figure out how to break into the prefab boom, send them this episode. It could help them evaluate the right tier and lock in a highly profitable partnership.
It is all about positioning yourself ahead of the curve before the curve runs you over.
Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. And to scale your operations without the admin headache, visit smartbusinessautomator.com.